Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's American Mussar Community Gathering. This is going to be our second week on the Soul Trade of Truth. If you're watching the recording, I urge you to kind of come in person because we often have these nice little chats before the recording, and one said where they were from, and someone got congratulated for winning an award. So it's a really nice experience. So, you know, come by the website and get the Zoom link and come join us. But for now, we're going to begin the way we always do with a short meditation. So please get comfortable in your seat and relax and close your eyes. And take in a deep breath through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And inhale through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And as you go at your own pace of inhaling through the nose and holding, and exhaling through the mouth and holding. If thoughts should come into your head, please observe them and let them go. Like watching a car move past on the highway. Now is not the time for solving problems. All you need to do is inhale through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And on your next inhale, say to yourself, Shema. And on the exhale, listen. Shema, listen. In Shema, we're listening deeply, without judgment, without offering advice. In Shema, we are listening with an open heart. Shema, listen. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. All kinds of people arrived during the meditation. Hello to Chaya and Janet and Stephanie and Harry. Nice to see you. So we are going to get started with the soul trade of humility. Sorry, with the soul trade of truth. And the question, it's a pretty simple one, actually. I guess I didn't need a slide for this, but how did the truth show up for you? How did truth show up for you in your Mussar journey this week? Did you try a practice? I know not everyone was here last week, but we can all maybe just take a moment and think about this and see where it goes. Wendy. You're still on mute. And that's
Think about how being a Mussar student kind of opens us up in a way to Shema, to hear when maybe we're not quite balanced on the spectrum. And I wrote Greg a long email, but the subject was, I lied. I was surprised and shocked at myself. But it was because of lack of humility, probably. But we were at Torah study on Shabbat. I picked the time to lie. We have a lot of people that come, and then we sit around these tables, and I got all set up, and my voice has not been great after the cold I had, but I got all set up, and so I was thinking, now I'm just nice and relaxed and ready to start. And 4 more people came in, which meant we need to have another table. And so people began, just, it was chaotic. and they picked up my chair, they picked up my water bottle, they moved my Torah and my Mishnah. I didn't have anything when I sat down again. There was nothing. I wasn't prepared. And I'm like, I'm just about myself at that point. So we start the Torah study, and it's a lot of times when we read, I want to read a certain part, and then maybe it doesn't get to me on time. So last year we were reading Bishalach, and it's one of my favorite parsha because Miriam dances, and because the women dance, and because they sing and they have timbrels, and I get so excited. And this year, that's the verse that came around to me, but I was not feeling good. So when it came to me, I couldn't find it could not find the place in the Torah. I was slow, and people were they just seemed to be like on my case about speed, and the rabbi looked over and said, would you like to pass? And I don't know, something about her voice. It sounded like she wanted me to pass or something. I shook my head yes, and I said, okay, yes. And then at that very minute is when I knew I had lied, because I desperately wanted to read that. That's exactly what I'd been waiting for a whole year to do. I lied, and I guess, you can lie without even realizing you're going to do it. And I even thought to maybe change it and say, oh, wait, no, don't start reading. I want to really read. I'm just kidding. And I just couldn't do that. So I said, okay, well, I learned my lesson. And I was thinking in the spectrums, you know how much I love the spectrums. And to me, it's like a teeter-totter. And I tottered. And I'm just like, even when you really want to tell the truth all the time, sometimes you don't.
Well, thank you, Wendy. Listening with an open heart. And I'm sure we've all been there where, for whatever reason, we just don't represent ourselves in the way that we would like to. Yes, Nancy and then Joanne.
Yes, I was talking to a friend of mine who I was sharing a story with, and was mentioned that this is really about truth. And I'm like, really? So I wanted to share a story that I think truth comes up in many different ways. It's like, okay, are you going to tell the truth, or are you going to tell something false? Is something going to bring you an awareness, the Holy Spirit, the universe, something in life is telling you to do something? Is that truth? Well, that's what happened to me. I don't know, who knows, but I adopted a dog in uh, December, and I made a mistake. I have to admit, I made a mistake. And I ended up, the universe came to me in so many interesting ways this past weekend, realizing I got the DNA results back early that morning. We went to a training. I realized I can't do the training. Now we know what the DNA is. It's a totally high energy dog. No wonder I was having the issues I was having. I was now trapped in a life that I could not live for the next 15 years. What is the truth? What is best for me? What is best for the dog? And I had some people, say, you're the kind of person we don't like in the animal world because you didn't do your research and you shouldn't take an innocent animal back. Then I talked to the person where I adopted the dog and some other people who were basically really supporting me, that you are doing the truthful, loving thing by protecting that dog and having that dog go into a household that can really handle her. And I can't. And it was hard for me. But to see the truth in my own heart and my mind, and the universe spoke to me Saturday night and said to me, you know what to do, no matter how hard it's going to be. So I feel that when we listen to ourself or the universe or the Holy Spirit or God or whatever we want to call it, and when we listen to the truth, whether it's that kind of story that I just explained, or a truth in a relationship, or whatever it is, what we come out with at the end is joy and peace.
Thank you. Thank you, Nancy. It's a very powerful story. Thank you for sharing it. Joanne.
Yeah, I don't, because now Nancy spoke, yeah, I think that's was great story, and great that you listened to your inner voice or whatever you want to call it, and did what was right, the right for you and for the dog. And people otherwise, I will just forget about it. Because the person who you adopted from knew you did, and I applaud you for that. That's a hard thing to do. And Wendy, hi, Wendy, I was just gonna say that, maybe the rabbi asking you if you'd like to pass, put it into your mind to do that. And it wasn't really that you were lying to yourself, but maybe just analyze it. I wasn't here. I mean, there's something to talk about. Never mind. It's not about truth, but it was about maybe not being as kind as I wanted to be. And my email got to the wrong person, who of course took offense, because that's what she does. All right, bye.
Thank you, Joanne. Hiya.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, it's interesting. I've had let's see, a 70-year relationship with my sister, who it's always been a, rub constantly. But when my father passed away, it's now about 15 years ago, maybe, or 17. Anyways, he asked me, even though my sister is older than me, she doesn't have quite the same sense of how to do things, put it that way. And he asked me to watch her. And I'm just like, I said, okay. And I do love her, and she has a very hard time with, accepting other people's truths. So it's really interesting. She was really, really sick about a month ago in the hospital, and I went all the way from Minneapolis to Hudson, Wisconsin, where she was in the hospital, bringing her stuff, picking up her boyfriend who doesn't drive, back to their house in St. Paul. And just recently, I mean, every time we talk, there's something like, if you say to her, I really like this, oh, I wouldn't do that. Or, I had this for dinner. Oh, I wouldn't eat that. And it's really, really difficult. But I decided, so in the middle of a conversation like 2 weeks ago, she says to me, I think it's time to say goodbye. And I said, okay, have a good night. I didn't want to fight or, so a week later, I did call her because I realized I love her. I don't necessarily like who she is, but I love her. She's my sister. And so I called her, and everything that we said was, hi, how you doing? Fine. What you been up to? Nothing. Have you guys been out at all? It's so nice out. Yeah. So I realized we weren't going to have a conversation, but I said, well, I see that you're, busy, or sounds like you want to go. So I just want you to know I love you and I'm here. And it felt so good to, be able to do that without getting into a fight. Because the truth is, and people around me have said, we see that you love her. You just guys can't get along. But there is a difference between truth and, yeah, I mean, I don't enjoy the conversations we have most of the time, but the truth is I love her in my heart.
Thank you so much, Haya, for sharing that. Marjorie.
Sorry, my microwave is making a noise. I'll be back.
Sometimes the truth, I haven't been here in weeks, so I don't know how much you've touched on, but sometimes for me, truth has become, it's not always a positive experience. Who was talking about their dog? Oh, Nancy. I had a dog who was 17 and I had to put him down. It was just time. And sometimes the truth is really hurtful, but I did it, and nothing. Well, what came out of it that was positive was I ended up with another dog who's, yeah, I get it. It's a lot of work, but she's more joy. But there are other, if somebody you're diagnosed with something or somebody has done something, sometimes I just have to confront them with, rather than circumventing the situation. It's like I have to be honest, and it might not always come out to be the most positive outcome, but I have to be truthful to myself. And that's all. Yeah, those are my thoughts.
Thank
And
you.
that's the truth. As Edith Ann, if anybody remembers Edith Ann from Laughing, that's the truth.
Truth is such a complicated and deep topic. I mean, each of you who shared have kind of gone in really different directions, and it all is relevant. And at the same time, it feels like we're kind of barely scratching the surface of all of the aspects of this soul trait. Anyone else care to comment before we move on? Yeah, Paul.
Yeah, thank you everybody for contributing. This has been, like Greg said, it's really looks at the breadth and depth of what truth really is. And I've been thinking today I went to give blood, and I had tried like 30 years ago to give this pheresis, which is just cells of a certain kind, and everything else comes back into the body. And I wasn't able to do it before. So I thought, well, let me give it another shot because I like giving blood, and whole blood you have to wait for so long, and this other thing you can do more often. So I'm in there, and as they told me there might be a little bit of like a tinkling in my lips just to let them know, and then they would, they would give me some antacid. It was for the calcium. So it took about like maybe an hour and a quarter to go through the whole thing. And by the end, it was very uncomfortable. It was not painful, but I just felt really buzzy all over. Turns out that I was getting a reaction to this, something that they use when they push the cells that they want to get back into me back in. And so it was sort of capturing calcium, pulling it out of my bloodstream, which was affecting, my nerve system. They were monitoring me, so I wasn't close to anything dangerous, anything like that. But it was, for the longest time, I turned 69 just a few months ago, and the truth of being older is really kind of settling in on me. And that's a hard truth because for such a long time in my life, I was always very physically fit and hale and hearty. And it turned out that, whatever drug there was on the market, I was usually somehow miraculously genetically in the group that responds really well to it. So I just recently had a couple of things where I had medical things where I didn't have a good reaction to something. It's like, wow, the truth is that, and I've noticed this with my own body and others around me, some very close to me, where, things just don't work quite as well as they used to. And that's a hard truth to accept, so it's the truth of not just between people, but it's a truth, as others have mentioned, but within ourselves, just accepting that, yeah, it's a new truth, that it is what it is. And I just have to accept whatever changes there are, and, just incorporate that into my new behaviors to, just accept it. Well, I didn't like it for a long time, but now I'm accepting it. Thank you. Thank you for that reminder, dear. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it is hard. It is hard to accept these things, and there's a lot of challenges around truth. And I have to say, I will just make a confession. I've been like, when I was younger, I was very, like, why do people dye their hair? And, especially men, and just accept, whatever changes, with grace. And I have to say, as I've gotten more gray in the last few years, I have been kind of obsessing on, I really don't like my gray hair. I would really like to dye my hair. And I'm just like, it's been a fundamental thing, and I kind of agree with that in theory, but that is the truth. I just really don't like it. And I'm like, maybe should I shave my head? Should I dye my hair? And there's just something about this which it's just making me unhappy. I don't know if it's like, oh, I'm worried So anyway, there's just a lot here. Uh-oh, now we're all jumping in. Okay, Joanne. Remember to unmute, please. You're still muted.
No, my picture disappeared.
There you
Okay.
go.
So, yeah, this is how much hair I have now. I mean, I had a cut, but
Mhm.
it's not much. I found some wig that I love, and that's what I wear for state occasions and to
Mhm.
synagogue usually. And if I have a board meeting, I usually wear that because I feel like it looks great, and that's my substitute. I used to color my hair a lot. And I say go for it. If that's what you really want to do. Get one of those ones that washes out. So if you don't like it, you know, or you
Thank
could
you. I
try a
wasn't
different
looking for
color.
advice. I was just making a
No, I'm
confession.
just
that-
saying, but this is the truth of what my hair is, but I
Yeah.
don't like it,
Mhm.
and I had a friend who was like very opposed to plastic surgery, but then I found out, I don't know, she got a lot of wrinkles, and I think it's partly posture. And she never put anything on her face like sunscreen. I don't understand why somebody doesn't know that if you wear a hat with a tiny brim, it doesn't protect your face. Anyway, that's also true. But some people are very resistant to taking anybody else's suggestion. So it's, anyway,
Thank
you
you.
might be happier if you dyed your hair. So at least try it, or try on a wig, or try on something online that you can do. Something to get an idea.
Thank you,
That's
Joanne.
what I think. Yep.
Okay. Carrie.
Mine's a hair and face truth. I'm going to preface by saying my mother was a beautiful woman. She had Alzheimer's, and the last few years of her life, she had a certain look, and that's what I remember. I don't remember the healthy mother, and I looked like her. And I used to have very, very short hair, and with the pandemic and everything, I just grew it out. But now every time I look in the mirror, I see that face, and the one with the Alzheimer's, and it's freaking me out. So I'm wrestling with that. I think I'm going to cut all my hair off and make it short again, so that maybe I won't have that visage. But my truth is, it scares me because I don't want to get Alzheimer's, and I'm doing everything I can not to. But it's just an interesting problem, so
Yeah.
to speak.
Thank you. Thank you, Carrie. Sue.
I could talk about hair, but that wasn't my why I piped up here. I have a kind of a sad story. I think it's sad about truth. So I mentioned my mom. I'm dealing with my mom, who's 97, who previously lived with dad in their own home, and she broke her hip. So she's now in a rehab in Florida. And I was talking to her the other day, and she says to me, "Well, can I live with you?" And I was totally taken aback from the question. That wasn't part of the plan. The plan was she was going to go home and with dad, and we're going to get someone to be there for her. And I just responded, "Okay, but we need to get you better first, blah, blah, blah." And then I realized that that wasn't the truth. And I can't tell her, okay. And she was really asking me, can I live with you? So the next day I had to tell her, Mom, I made a mistake. You can't really live with us. And then she said, well, you have 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. And I said, well, it's not safe for you. And she's with a caretaker now. And the caretaker told me that she just looks so sad, so I had to tell her the truth, which is it's not going to be safe for you. It's not going to be good for you. But it was hard to say that. And I mean, I didn't say that at first. And then I said the next day, I had to tell her the truth. And I believe that's best for her and it's best for me and my husband. But it was really hard to, as we were saying, one of the comments was it's difficult to say what the truth is.
Yeah. Thank you, Sue, and thank you for sharing that. And I know this has been a really difficult time, and that's, yeah. So listening with an open heart. Marianne.
Well, I have 2 truths, and one is I want to say that I will tell the truth by saying that I love my gray hair. So that's one truth. And the other truth is that I think it's not always good to tell the truth because both my parents have dementia, my father very badly, and it would just upset him if I tried to correct him to what is true. So I think it's kinder to just go with his reality and his truth.
Thank you, Marianne. And that is one of the most important concepts of, we do loving kindness and then we do truth. And, like if we are giving too much truth, it may not be kind. And really, one of the key things about whether we tell the truth or not is the impact it'll have on the other person. And even if it'll make the other person sad, as in Sue's case, it doesn't mean that we sometimes we have to tell our truth, even if it does make the other person sad, because there are realities, for whatever reason. And sometimes what we want and what someone else wants are different things. And can be hard. It can be hard to navigate. But if we're not truthful, and I'm sort of thinking about the spectrum of truth, kind of at the other side, if there's too little truth, it erodes trust, it erodes a pillar of the world. And, you also don't want to get into when is this going to happen? You said this, when is this going to happen? And then, knowing that it's never going to happen. And that's even worse. Linda or Frank?
Both of us.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I just want to I have a couple of things to share. One is I appreciated Paul mentioning about aging, because you notice that when you get up on a ladder, you don't feel as safe as you used to. Or when you cross the street, maybe the green light is the right place to cross. So I've been doing truths, noticing my life and see where I need to kind of adjust. I like living. The other thing is, I have a neighbor that we go on walks and we share our stories, and he's active in his church and I'm active in my synagogue, and so we have some, good sharing. And for some reason, I said things to him that I regretted right afterwards, and they were truths, and I felt that I may have been insensitive, and I've done this before with a Jewish friend, and I got a good smack out of it. And basically, what I said was, and is that I had a neighbor who was ordained as a minister in United Church of Christ, and when he was in seminary, within several weeks in the seminary, all the students were atheists, and I realized that this is not what the rabbis wanted us to do.
Mm.
Just because something is true, it doesn't mean that you share it.
Mm.
And I know that in my life, I've been trying to kind of adhere to that adage, that teaching, is that share truths where it matters,
Yeah.
where it doesn't harm.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Thank you, Frank. And Linda.
I don't know if there's a soul trait for being a wimp, but I don't think that telling the truth is always, in my book, the best thing. I believe that white lies can get us somewhere, but it takes a lot of discernment. And Frank and I talk about this a lot because sometimes I err on the side of wanting to say my truth, whereas he would spare the other person's feelings. And then sometimes it's the other way around. So I don't think it's cut and dried one or the other. It takes a lot of deep thought to be true to ourselves while also being kind enough to the other person.
Absolutely, Linda. That is part of, and only we can kind of decide how we want to show up with that. And there's a story in the Torah about that. I don't know if that's what Joanne was going to say. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the story about when Sarah hears that she's gonna have a child, and she says, I'm gonna have a child, and my husband is so old. So and then she laughs, I think, and God says, you laughed, and she says, no, I didn't. Yeah, you laughed. And then he goes to Abraham, and he doesn't say, your wife said she was so old. He said, I mean, you're so old. She said, she's too old to have a child. So
Yeah.
God told her white lie
Yeah.
to spare Abraham.
Yeah, because Abraham said, why is Sarah laughing? And
Mhm.
it's like, because she thinks she's too old to have a child. Yeah, absolutely. So if God could tell a white lie to spare someone's feelings,
So
yeah.
can we.
So thank you. Well, I'm going to take us in a, oh, Sarah, yes, please.
I was going to say that I need to err more on the side of being a wimp instead of a dragon. And I think that, it's true what somebody was saying about that sometimes it's better left unsaid. And I tend to be, I don't think it's good necessarily to be brutally honest. So I've had to learn over my lifetime that it's not necessary, and sometimes oversharing, what you really think is not necessarily kind for the person. And then you might have that, what's that, the remorse, like, I can't see, Frank, I think you were talking about, like, the remorse about saying, like wishing that you wouldn't have stuck your foot in the mouth or whatever, it's like, it's just not necessary. It's not kind. And it makes, I don't know, it's a bad reflection on me sometimes, and I think that people don't necessarily want you to, for me, everybody's different, but for me, I think that people don't necessarily want to hear the whole truth and nothing but the truth. It's better to hold back a little bit.
Yeah, and that's part of absolutely. And I had the same penchant for brutal honesty, and it just caused a lot of trouble. And
Yeah.
I married it with a lot of arrogance. I was like, well, if they can't take it, that's just, their issue. And well, it actually was my issue.
And I found for me that it's created problems with certain relationships, you know, and now I have to backpedal and say, well, what's more important to me, to, you know, have good relationships and keep my mouth less opened, and you know, sometimes it's better for me to share less. So I agree, you know, Greg, I'm like that as well.
Yeah. So if we were to think about this, like sometimes we can practice one soul trait to help us with another. And if we're kind of on the, well, I have a truth to share, but I don't think it's the right thing to share it. It's going to be too hurtful. It's going to be just damaging. It's going to be disruptive, but I really, really want to say it. So what might we practice to kind of help us keep our mouth shut? Yeah, Wendy.
Silence.
Silence.
Yeah.
Yeah. Silence. What else?
But I just want to say that truth has consequences. Remember that old show? Truth has consequences and untruth has consequences. So I think that story that you said, Joanne, about Abraham and Sarah, it's showing you God wants us to use the good sense that God gave us, or just like the upstairs brain. Because I was thinking about all of these different things you guys were saying, and I realized, oh, that had that consequence, that had that consequence, and it would be truth or untruth. So we have to make that decision.
Yeah.
Be silent sometimes. Yeah.
So silence is one option. Sue, do you have another thought?
Yeah, loving kindness.
Loving kindness.
Yeah, I'm thinking that if it's when I think of truth, I think, is it necessary and is it kind?
Yeah, loving kindness. What else? Marjorie, what do you think?
Humility.
Humility. Say more. Why humility?
Because why humility? It's just not necessary to always just to keep it within myself, you know, what I'm not losing any face over something, you know, if it's really not that crucial of a truth.
Yeah. And I might add to that, is it my place to give the truth?
Ah, yes.
So what else? Wendy again.
Honor.
Honor. When I thought it was patience, you know, oh, I really want to say this. But it's like, all right, I'm going to sit with the discomfort of staying silent. So I'm going to practice patience. So I just have to bear the burden of keeping my mouth shut. Okay, so we are going to head into our breakout rooms. I put something in the chat. A comment from Rabbi Carol Glass. Truth is the sole trait of inclusive, respectful regard for both what is apparent and what remains undetected, for both what is obvious and what may elude us or be hidden from us. So when there's an intense disagreement with someone, what is the hidden truth that they may have access to that you don't? Or maybe what's a truth that you have where you're like, you know what, they can't have access to my truth. You know, I had to say something which they didn't like, but, you know, I have another truth to go with that. So it's really getting into this relationality aspect. So let me just open the rooms here. Okay. So the rooms are open and let's see.
That's the old man's Frank.
Yes.
Yeah.
And sometimes when saying something, especially in a relationship, being able to say something which is true and has integrity throughout of, you know, whatever it is can be difficult because there's some things that I'm embarrassed about that are sort of underlying the thing that I'm saying.
Baggage.
Yeah,
Yeah,
baggage
baggage.
and history with something that so
Yeah.
that's where having this back and forth, clarifying, is this what you mean? Well, no, that's not. Let me rephrase it, and then eventually we get to a very clear conversation. But it takes some time because of those. Well, we were talking about, sometimes there are truths we grow up with family or culture that are truths that, you're not supposed to question. And part of what we have to, what we learn as we grow older is, which ones are truly true and which ones are just impediments to finding truth. So,
Yeah, and I think as you point out, sometimes we need someone else to help us, whether it's counselor, whether it's friend, whether it's something else. And just, what do I believe about this? And,
Yeah. What the last question that I had asked before I messed up our conversation, maybe others can help me with that, is sometimes it's like, how can they see it this way and I can see it this way? Like, how does our nation, that we're so divided in many ways, how do I learn, how is that a truth to them that's not a truth to me? You know what I'm saying? I don't know. And so that's what's really hard of understanding truths.
yeah. Yeah, well, I had something that was planned for today where it touched on that a little bit. And my thinking is that we should roll over and do another week of truth because there's so much, what do people think? Does that sound good? Yeah, because this has been very, very rich. And there's, we could just roll with it. So since we have no end date, we have no syllabus to follow, we can do what we want. So good, we'll do a third week of truth next week.
Greg, I wanted to say something about this group.
Sure.
It's unique in our circles in the personal truths that we're willing to share with each other. And I just value that so much that maybe there's enough trust, or I don't know what the quality is, but there's just something so refreshing about being able to say the things that we talk about. And I thank everybody.
Thank you so much, Linda. And yeah, it's a very special group, no question about it. I'm going to put up, just because I think it is important and we don't always spend enough time on it, to sort of think about the practices. Because it's wonderful that we can do this here, and taking, as we've all really covered today, this impacts our lives so much. And let's look at this list. I don't know that anything here like touches on a lot of the stuff we've talked about, but I'm going to read these off and maybe just think about, does this inspire you for one small change you want to make in your life, something that you can do to maybe help bring you a little bit more towards balance. So one is practicing humility to overcome the fear of judgment, because sometimes we're untruthful if we're afraid of being judged. Practice trust to help you overcome the fear of telling the truth, even if it's a major fear like losing your job. I'm going to trust in this relationship. I'm going to trust in the divine that things will be okay, even if it's a little hard. What's the truth tolerance at your employer or in your community or with your friends? Do people want to tell the truth, or is everything just okay all the time? Be mindful that your truth may not be the only truth in play. Kind of what Chaya was just talking about. How do we deal with that? Practice patience to bear the burden of waiting for what you want until you can achieve it without shading the truth. And then distance yourself from falsehood. We've been talking about truth, but that's something that we'll touch on next week. It's like, well, when is there multiple truths, and when is someone just lying to be manipulative and claiming it's the truth, but they actually know it's a bunch of BS? And that's not what we're talking about. So with that in mind, I invite you to once again close your eyes and take in a nice leisurely breath and a nice leisurely exhale. And let's just soak in the connection to the group. Take a moment of appreciation for this opportunity to share our truths, have real substantial conversation about things that matter to us. I appreciate our tradition, the Jewish tradition, whether we're formally a part of the Jewish community or part of the Jewish community just by association, just part of this community. But the wisdom this tradition can share with us. And just let your mind go quiet. When you're ready, you may open your eyes.